The Last of Us Part 2 has officially won the Game Awards Game of the Year award. This is a very seen as controversial game, and I'm sure if you know my channel, you know that I love this game. I brought together 3 different content creators to discuss this with. Mus is going to be first. He hasn't played the game, but he thinks it looks very interesting. He's brand new to the channel, so please welcome him with open arms. Next is Hyden, who I'm sure you know. He hasn't played the game, and has some critiques with it, but I was interested to know what his actual opinion was. And now that he's explained it in further detail after our debate, I'm very surprised by the result, and I'm sure you must be too. The third person I've brought to discuss this with is MonadoMax. He's brand new to the channel also, but is a much bigger YouTuber who has very different opinions than me on this. He did play the game, but gave it a score of a 4 out of 10. I gave it a 5 out of 5, or a 10 out of 10. I discussed this with him for over an hour, so this is the most in-depth of the 3 interviews. So please enjoy this special episode of Console Conversations. Hello everybody, it's me, Walter the Germany Boy, and I'm here with my interview with Mus, who is a great supporter of the channel, but it's their first time on an actual video, in a collaboration video, and I'm going to be talking to them about The Last of Us Part 2. So, I have 3 questions, and the first one I have to ask you, Mus, is, what are your thoughts on the game? What do you think of the game? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's mediocre? I just want to know what you think.
Alright, so The Last of Us is an amazing game, and it's a third-person game and it has a lot of story to it. What makes games good are mostly story-based games, like games that actually have some meaning. What The Last of Us brings to us is like a shooter game that actually has a lot of depth and meaning. It just brings a lot into the game, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that. And it's just really fun to play.
Okay, and I assume you're talking about the first game? Are you talking about the first game?
Yeah, first game.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think I really like the first game too. I mean, it's definitely, when I first played it, I really, really enjoyed it. Now, after playing the second game and try to go back, the gameplay kind of, is a little clunky, but the story is really, very well done. And, when you get to the winter part, that's the gameplay just explodes there, just becomes amazing at that point. So, yes, and so, well, I know you like the first game, and I don't believe you played the second one, but, do you think it looks good? Would you rather, what I mean is, do you think that the people who say it's good are correct, or do you think when people say it's terrible, that they're correct?
Now, I did play The Last of Us 2 for the first 10 minutes, and it was amazing. Now, what people say if the game is bad, I would disagree with that. Because The Last of Us 2 is just taking a whole different approach, and it's like a new big step for The Last of Us. So, yeah, it did take a while to come out, but still, it was like a really, really big approach, and I feel like they put a lot of effort onto the game.
Well, yeah, I would certainly agree. I mean, yeah, I obviously would agree if you're saying positive things about the game. But, yeah, I would say that a lot of people, they get mad over a few things.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna spoil the game for you, obviously. But, yeah, people get mad over, 4 little scenes in the story. That's literally it. and they just kind of neglect the rest. So I think you're very much right. And it is a huge innovation. Like the first game, the gameplay can be boring at times. Like you're kind of just moving dumpsters sometimes and just doing some boring puzzles. It makes up a lot of the experience. But in Last of Us 2, every puzzle is really, really interesting. And, the gameplay, the gunplay, and the stealth are just very well done. So yeah, I would agree with that. And so then my second question is, it won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. And my question is, do you think it deserved to win? Or do you think it didn't deserve to win and something else deserved to win instead? And if so, what do you think should have won instead?
I feel like The Last of Us 2 was a great game, but in my opinion, I would have gotten with Cyberpunk because it's more of a first person game and I enjoy those games. It's more of a futuristic approach, and you can like change the story and they give you like different options of what to say and stuff. And yeah, it has like a lot of story into it.
Yeah, I mean,
I
like,
mean,
that
even though
game.
like Cyberpunk was delayed many times, it's still like a masterpiece.
So, yeah, I mean, it looks very good, I have to say that. And it has a lot of really, really innovative features. My only thing is, it came out like a couple days
But
ago,
still, I have
right?
I have to go with yeah, I have to go with The Last of Us though. Cyberpunk did come, but I feel like The Last of Us 2 was more a masterpiece because when Cyberpunk came out, it had like a lot of bugs and stuff, and it
Yeah.
didn't really feel good. But like when The Last of Us 2 came out, it was like a full, fresh new game.
Yeah,
And also on like the other consoles, like since we got the PS5, we got the PS5, Xbox Series X, and all that stuff, right? But like on the Xbox One and the PS4, it's kind of like bugging out a lot on that.
yeah, you're right. Like, I've heard so many stories about Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk doesn't run well on PS4. Cyberpunk doesn't run well on Xbox One. Over and over again. And Last of Us 2, like, I played it on the PS4. I beat it twice on the PS4. Not the PS4 Pro, not the PS4 Slim, a PS4 from 7 years ago. And it was, yeah, it got really loud with the fan, but it ran it. There were no frame rate drops. The game always looked great. Like, it was astounding. So, yeah, like, Cyberpunk, looks like a great game. I mean, I'm not the most interested. I would rather wait. I'm usually not very interested in third party games. But like, WoW is in a big difference in terms of technicality. So I agree with that. And so my final question is, what are your favorite slash least favorite parts when it comes to the Game Awards, like what they decided on the awards, and your favorite and least favorite parts of The Last of Us Part 2? So, like, for example, I would say my favorite part of Last of Us 2 is Seattle Day 2, and my least favorite part is the prologue or something like that. I mean, that's not exactly true, but you know. So I would ask you, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of the game? Obviously, you haven't played it, but from what you've seen, if you got the game, if you played through the whole game, what would be the parts you would be most excited for and the ones you'd be less excited about? And what do you think the Game Awards decided correctly on, and what do you think they didn't decide very good on? Like, the winners.
So for The Last of Us 2 and the good parts, I would rather say parts that have more fighting that engages you and some cutscenes. But the parts that I don't like is like it's like most because they were putting like a bit longer cutscenes, which made it kind of like a bit more storyish, which was good. But like at the same time, I did want to play something. I did not buy this game to watch a movie or something.
Yeah. I mean, like that's what I thought about a lot of the flashback scenes. I mean, they certainly were very good, well written and interesting, and in my opinion, necessary. But you know, every time, like when I replayed it, and I was on Seattle Day, I think it was. Well, I'm just gonna say a part of the game. I'm about halfway through, and I played through that part, and I'm like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about this part, and I'm kind of bored. I wish there was like kind of a way to skip it because it's my third time through the game, and I don't really need to see that part over and over again. So yeah, I get what you're saying. So yeah, also, final thing is, what do you think about the Game Awards this year? Do you think that, I mean, I know you said that you think they were right to decide Last of Us 2 for Game of the Year, but, do you believe that Last of Us 2 deserved to win Best Action Adventure and Best Game Direction and Best Narrative? Do you think it deserved those as well? Or do you think that another game deserved
I
it?
would go on the game and adventure. That I would go for uh what was it? Yeah. So for The Last of Us, I'd more go for an action and adventure because there's more like action, more fight scenes, and
Hmm.
yeah, there's more action going on, and like there's even like more because you're going to like other places, which is yeah, it's more adventure too.
Yeah. Well, do you think it deserved to win Best Narrative Story as well? Because for me, when I honestly thought that was the biggest hurdle it had to overcome. Because I thought if it won that, then it was pretty much a lock that it would win Game of the Year. And it did win that. But do you think it deserved to win Best Story, or do you think that another game uh, from this year deserved to win that award instead?
The thing is that when 2020 started, most games got delayed, and only not too many games were released. So that's why I would be going with The Last of Us, because even the games that released right now, like that released as fast as they could for 2020, because they were also getting delayed a lot, and so they tried to rush the game. So, but on The Last of Us, they took their time and everything, and
Hmm.
yeah, it deserves that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of really good stories this year. Like, pretty much every big release I played, like, had an amazing story. Like, wow, I was shocked. Like, first game I played with an amazing story was Last of Us 2. And that still remains my favorite. I think it should have won that as well. And then I played Ghost of Tsushima, and I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the story, but it is really entertaining. It's not a masterpiece or super, like, well, it's not like a piece of art, but it's very entertaining. And then I played Paper Mario, and that one was just hilarious. And then there was Miles Morales and Bugsnax, both of which were great too. So it had some steep competition in my book, but yeah, I think you're right. I think in the end, Last of Us deserved to win. So, with that being said, thank you, Moose, for joining us in this interview, and thank you for watching this segment. And now we're on to the next interview. Hello, everybody. We're back with another interview. This time we're with Hyden, probably the most familiar person to the channel, and me and him have discussed The Last of Us Part 2 before in our debate episode of Console Conversations, but this is much different. Instead, I'm going to be asking him the same three questions that I asked everybody else, and so let's get into it. So my first question for you, Hyden, is very simple. Just what do you think of the game overall?
Well, uh, well, I haven't played it, but it seems like you said before, it's like a a semi-open world game. So it seems like an interesting game overall with like if it has the same mechanics as the first game and
Mm-hmm.
like modifies on the combat, then I feel like it it I feel like that's like one of the more important parts about the game. And also like how you explain the story. Like at first I didn't like understand why they went that way with the story. Like why Ellie let Abby live after she killed Joel. But
Mm-hmm.
then after you explained it, I realized that, like you said, it makes sense because she doesn't want to, like, she doesn't want to go on the path of revenge. Like, she wants to end that circle.
Mm-hmm.
It, and that was an interesting part of the story,
Okay.
um, which, like, kind of differentiates it from other like revenge stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, that's probably the biggest thing that makes it different. Um, a follow-up question that I have would be, do you think that, uh, I'll phrase it this way. I mean, obviously you haven't played the game, so this isn't, very informed, but based on what you've heard and seen and all that, what do you think you would give the game, the game as a whole and the story? What do you think, for a score you would give the game and the story before, and what you would give it now, and if that has changed at all?
Hmm. Well, it would either score would either be like if if I was like on like doing like a Metacritic review and I was like a real like reviewer and I was taking into account what they actually think about their games, I would
Yeah.
give it either like a 9 or a 10 based on like the gameplay, how it looks and the story elements, and that really hasn't changed. And also because like it's it seems um like it like the 9 and 10 like because like every game is not perfect like
Hmm.
but it has flaws but it's better than a lot of games out there.
Yeah. So you would say that you would. Are you saying that you'd give it a 9 before, or 9 or 10 before, and you'd give it a 9 or 10 now, or are you saying that you
Yeah,
just give it a 9 and 10 now?
well I would give it a 9 and 10 before and now because my opinion really hasn't changed on the game.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, so when we had our debate, right? But so you just said this, right? That you think it. So you would say that the biggest thing that you changed your, like, the really only thing you changed your mind on was the ending. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So I okay, well, I did not know that you thought the game was good, actually. So that's actually very interesting for me to learn. Um, and I especially did not know that you changed your mind on that. So that's interesting to know. So my next question is, well, unless there's something you want me to ask you or something you want to add before I go to my second
um
question.
mm, Not really. I mean, maybe except like, I wonder what the third game's going to be about, since
Mm,
like
yeah.
we've already covered the I like the story of the first game, which I don't exactly know what the message of that one was about. Like maybe doing, I don't really know, but they
The
covered that story type of story, and then they covered like the revenge story.
mhm.
So I kind of wonder what the third story and is going to be about.
Well, the developers said that the first game was about love and the second game was about hate. So, I don't know, maybe this one... Because if we're going based off the ending of the second game, then it's probably going to have something to do with... I'm not going to name them, so I'm avoiding spoiling something for you. A certain group in California, and the the thing that happens with Dina at the very end of the game. I think it's mostly going to be built around that. And like, yeah, it's very interesting because but I don't think we really have to worry because the first game, right, ended and there wasn't a lot unresolved, right? Like the only real thing they had to follow up on was what happened to Joel, and oh boy, did they follow up on that.
Yeah.
But this one, there's even more stuff, and there's also this one piece of dialogue from Seattle Day 1. I think it's from the pet store. I think when you go there with Dina, she mentions that when she was in New Mexico, there was a group named the Ravens, and so that's interesting too because that's another group that they've mentioned. So I'm certain it's gonna be built around all that, and seeing as how Seattle Day 3 as Abby ended, that's gonna be big because of how WLF and Seraphites how that played out. And one thing I'm really interested in seeing is maybe we'll get to play as Lev, and that'd be very cool, or maybe Abby and Ellie will team up. But whatever, I'll save that for another video. You don't want to hear... I'm sure the people watching just don't want to hear me rant for an hour about my conspiracies on this episode. But anyway, so my second question for you is... Um, are you happy with the results of the game awards? And especially, did you think that The Last of Us Part 2 deserved to win Game of the Year? So just to clarify, the three biggest awards that Last of Us Part 2 received were I believe best... what was it? Best narrative. Best narrative was the first one. Best game direction and game of the year. I believe it also won like best audio design, and then Laura Bailey got best game performance for being Abby. So, do you think it deserved to win these awards, and especially do you think it deserved game of the year?
Well, before I answer that, what were the other nominees for Game of the Year?
Um. I know Doom Eternal. I believe Ghost of Tsushima, and Animal Crossing. Those are the biggest ones that I remember. Oh, and I believe Hades. I believe that Hades game too. But yeah, I that's all I can remember. Those are the biggest ones, really.
Um, so, hmm. Well, based on that, I think like the two like major competitors for that like would be The Last of Us and Hades. Like Ghost of Tsushima was a good game, but I like you mentioned in your like there's issues with it. Like it's pretty easy.
Hmm.
Like I've been playing on in like the hardest difficulty,
Yeah.
and like even through that, like the story itself is pretty short and pretty easy to get through, but um
Hmm.
I feel like it makes sense that Ghost of Tsushima got awarded the award for best visuals or something. But anyway, um, for The Last of Us, um, I feel like the main things that got it over
Oh yeah.
and were the gameplay and the mechanics. Um,
Hmm.
but um, I think it's interesting that it won 7 awards,
Yeah, that's a lot.
which is like, and then I've also seen like a lot of people saying it was rigged, which is also interesting, but I don't
Yeah.
think it was rigged or like they were paid off because like
Yeah.
they maybe, but I wouldn't see that as like people and critics, like people have their own opinions about a game and build them throughout the game, but like they're not like professional critics who like do this thing for a living and can like
Yeah.
spot and can tell the differences between games and are able to see how the meanings of the story and how like the mechanics and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, yeah, I mean, The Last of Us 2, like, I really, honestly, if I'm telling the complete truth, I think the only reason people hated it was because of the leaks. Like, I bet that if the game came out without any leaks beforehand and people played the story without knowing what was going to happen beforehand, I guarantee you they'd probably love it. Like, because, I mean, if you look, like, there's this one guy, and, like, I usually don't target specific people like this, but I mean, they have, like, millions of subscribers, so they probably won't see this video, ever. So, I can say it. Their name's, like, Angry Joe, I think, and they did a review on Last of Us 2, and it was, like, one of the most offensive, ridiculous reviews of the game I've seen. And one of the biggest thing that I saw was when I was watching a Video Game Donkey's video. I think it was his review, which is a very good review. Um, and when I watched that, I saw that guy saying, I don't want to play it because of the leaks. And I bet you, again, like 1000%, people would have loved the game if they hadn't seen the leaks. Like, I mean, yeah, you'd probably still have people saying, it's woke propaganda, ugh, but I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I mean, I guess because, like, Ellie is gay and, like, Lev is transgender, but it's like, who cares? Like, why are you really going to get offended because of the sexual orientation of a video game character? Like, are you that sad? But yeah, so, like, I definitely agree with you. Like, I think a lot of people did like the game. Like, it was just
Mhm.
a loud minority, is what it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah. And so, my final question is, obviously you haven't played the game, but this is the question. I asked Moose this too, and he hasn't played the game either, so I'm still gonna ask it. From what you've seen, what do you think the best and worst, not like parts of the game as a whole, but like segments of the game of The Last of Us Part 2 are, and what the worst ones are, in your opinion, from what you've seen? And same thing about the award show itself. What do you think they decided that you would agree with, and what do you think that you wouldn't agree with? Like, do you think, like, for example, would you say, oh, Last of Us 2 deserved to win Best Narrative, but it didn't deserve to win Game of the Year, for example? What do you think of
Mhm.
that?
Well, I didn't. I haven't really watched much on The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, I would say the worst part for me, from what I've seen, would be Joel dying because he was a big, he was the main character of the last game,
Hmm.
and you don't like to see, like, you build a connection with the main character, and you don't really want to see him die. It was kind of interesting because I was um, like, the person that played someone that on the Last of Us team that got the award said the director made a ballsy story, probably because of killing Joel, but and other things in the story as
Hmm.
well. But
Oh, I think that
like,
would. Yeah.
um, and so that would probably be the worst, I guess. And the award show, um, um, well, uh, I think. I feel like there was some like like, I mean, there haven't been like a lot of games this year. Like, the major games this year were like Animal Crossing, Dreams, Crash Bandicoot, uh, Clubhouse games, Ghost of Tsushima, and Final Fantasy Remake. It was interesting that that got a reward, even though it's a remake, but I'm guessing it's different enough from the original. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel like based on all of that, um, like on all of the games that got released this year, I think that were in the Game Awards. I think Ghost of Tsushima, I mean not Ghost, The Last of Us, probably was the best. I mean I haven't played Final Fantasy, but it Final Fantasy 7. I mean that could have gotten the best narrative, but I don't know. I haven't played it. I haven't heard anything about the story at all, so I have no opinion on that. But like Animal Crossing, like that was a big game, but I didn't think that it was going to get like really game of the year because it's
Yeah.
a it's not even it's a town simulator game kind of.
Yeah, it's like a much more simplistic game in comparison.
Yeah. And like Ghost like Ghost which one did Ghost of Tsushima win? Was
I
it
don't.
best
I.
visuals?
It was, yeah. It was either like best visuals or sound design. Which sound design? That's weird. Like I don't really recall any sound effects from that game being that amazing. Um. But yeah.
So I think it was visuals
Yeah. Which.
because
mm,
you go on.
Like, yeah. Like Ghost of Tsushima looked beautiful, but honestly, in my opinion, like Last of Us 2 looked, it didn't necessarily look better. Like they pretty much look the same. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the graphics are very similar in terms of quality. Although I will
Mhm.
say, like the cutscenes of Ghost of Tsushima, like some of the like faces in the cutscenes can be weird, and the
Mhm.
graphics in Ghost of Tsushima, it was used very well to make like the nature look absolutely gorgeous. But
Mhm.
Last of Us 2, like the graphics were like amazing because like look at I'm gonna mute myself so you don't hear this spoiler. Look at the Rat King, because that thing is so unbelievably terrifying and disgusting. Um,
Mhm.
and the graphics just make that like come to life. So
Mhm.
I don't know which one. I mean, I'd maybe say Last of Us 2, but Ghost of Tsushima definitely a worthy of getting that award. But some
Here's
oh
what were you saying?
oh no, I was just about to go to the next question, but if you have something to say,
Oh.
then go ahead.
Oh, you can ask it.
Oh, okay. So my final follow-up question, well, for right now that I can think of is, um, so do you think Last of Us 2 deserved Best Narrative? And
Hmm.
not only of the nominees, but of like every game this year. Do you think it deserved it, or do you think like here's a better question. Of the games that you know the story of, how would you rank the award you would give them? So, like, for me, I'd say Last of Us 2, Miles Morales, Bug Snacks, Paper Mario, and Ghost of Tsushima.
Mhm. Um, well, I know the Animal Crossing story. It doesn't have a story. It's kind of, well, the story is you're paying off your debt to Tom Nook.
Yeah,
That's
which
the
is the story
story.
of every, which is the
Yeah,
story of every Animal Crossing game.
yeah, and I don't know the story of Final Fantasy. And anyway, moving on.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to.
Go Ghost of Tsushima is I think the story the story is interesting but also kind of plain.
Yes, that's exactly what I was, yeah, thinking.
Yeah. and Paper Mario, I like the story. It's definitely better than the last few Paper Marios because, well, maybe except well, the last two Paper Marios because like you had like a story where characters actually die and actually sacrifice themselves,
Yeah.
and like there's an actual the point like it the point of um the Origami King um constructing this army because something his master did to them that he wasn't supposed to do to origami. um I mean that was it makes sense for origami, but like the like the the purpose well, for origami it makes sense because it's kind of like he betrayed me. I
Hmm.
don't I don't know, like he's the only paper bean I know, so it kind of makes sense, but it's also kind of weak, like that the motivation.
Yeah.
But like I liked um like the parts where I liked how they expanded on characters they already had. Like they expanded on Kamek or Cam of how I mean it's obvious, but it shows how he's never listened to by Bowser and how he wants to be listened to by Bowser because he has good ideas.
Hmm.
and like how Bowser gives parenting advice, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Um, and the relationships between the partners are the partners, well, because they don't really stay forever, but they're still partners that travel along. I like how they're at least there, so it's not just Mario
Yeah.
roaming throughout. You
So,
have the comedic forever partner, like the bucket or the crown, but you also have other partners that interact with the comedic partner as well.
yeah. So, how would you, I'm assuming those are your three favorites, right?
um yeah.
So, how would you rank them? Like,
Well,
what would be first, second, third?
um well, those are the only games I got this year. So I would rank them probably on the top would be Paper Mario. Well, Paper Mario, or for story, I would say Paper Mario and then Ghost of Tsushima because um they're they're it's kind of hard to differentiate from where I would put them, but I'm just going to put Paper Mario on top because for me it had like like a better, it had more story than Jin's going to attack. He's going to attack the first base, and then with
Yeah.
his past friend, his friend betrays him. He fights him. His friend runs away and then joins the con. And then eventually he goes to his house, does his house things, goes to his uncle's uh, castle or fort, and attacks that. And does he? I think he fights friend again. But anyway, eventually he kills his friend and ends that part, and then he attacks the con, and that's or yeah, he attacks his friend, and then because he doesn't want to not be he defies his uncle by saying he'll still be the ghost, and then gets arrested and is going to get exiled or uh, executed,
Yeah.
and he escapes, and then he goes north and fights the Khan and defeats him, and then that's the entire story.
Yeah, it's pretty simplistic. So you're saying Paper Mario at the top, and then are you saying Ghost of Tsushima and then Last of Us 2?
Or Animal Crossing there because it doesn't have a story, and then Last of Us 2, I think it it would either I think it would be either above or below Paper Mario.
So either first or second place?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, so is there anything else you'd like to add before we end this?
Um. So it's a kind of a question, not really about Last of Us, but if um if Cyberpunk 2077 came out earlier this year, do you think that it would have won Game of the Year with all the hype about it and stuff, and the good scores on Metacritic as well?
Well, here, I'm gonna look up the Metacritic score real quick. Metacritic Cyberpunk there. First result when Cyberpunk 2077. 90. That's pretty good. Um,
Hmm.
oh, wait, what? Wait, hold on. Let me look at that user score.
What was it?
It's oh my god. 5.8. I think that's, oh, here, let's see, Last of Us 2.
So, which one are you looking at for the Cyberpunk 2077? Are you
PC,
looking
because
at?
people say that's the best version.
Well, yeah, probably because it's able to handle Cyberpunk 2077.
Unlike the PS4. Oh yeah, Last of Us 2 is 5.7 and 93 critic. So, the critics like it more, definitely.
Hmm.
Because PC, I think, is the highest score Cyberpunk has. And now the thing about Cyberpunk is people have been saying it's like fun, but
Hmm.
that the but that the combat is bad, and that
Hmm.
it runs terribly on every platform other than PC and
Well,
PS5.
it's also super buggy.
Yeah. So do I think it deserved? No. Even though I haven't played it, knowing that, I don't think it deserved to be Last of Us. Um, but do I think it would have? Like probably also no. Because I don't think people would have had enough time to look at it. And plus, if it didn't have that final delay to December, who
Hmm.
knows? Like, it might have been way buggier. It might not have even functioned properly, right? So,
Yeah.
like, considering that, I definitely don't think it would win. If it's this level of quality, I still don't think it would win because of all that. But yeah, I don't think it would have. It might have won, might have gotten close to beating Last
Hmm.
of Us, but I don't think it would have. So yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
All right. Well, thank you, Hyden, for joining me in this special
Mm.
episode. And thank you all for watching. And let's go on to our next interview, which is with MonadoMax. So, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's me, Walter the Germany Ball, here with the last interview for this special episode of Console Conversations with MonadoMax. This is the first time he's in a video on this channel, so a warm welcome to him. And we're going to jump into my first question, which is the most simple of all the questions, really. Uh,
Mhm.
Basically, just what do you think of the game and why?
Last of Us Part 2. Oof. Well, if you see my channel, you would know that I really do not like that game, and that's coming from somebody who is a massive, massive Last of Us fan. Been a fan of the series since it actually came out. One of my favorite games of all time. So maybe it's my fault that I don't like the game for having such high expectations for Last of Us Part 2, since the first one was so great in my opinion. I honestly think it's one of the greatest games ever made. And yeah, I really don't like it. There's loads of different reasons. I mean, I know what a lot of people point to for not liking the game is like, Joel's death. And well, I don't really care that Joel died. It was more the way how they did it, and so like out of character for Joel. I'm fine if they killed Joel off in the beginning of the game. It was just I wasn't happy with how they did it. They could have done it better, in my opinion. I don't know if anyone here has watched The Walking Dead. It seemed like to me that they really were trying to copy the way that Negan kills. Well, I'm not going to spoil who Negan kills in the show or comic, but Negan kills somebody, and it is pretty much exactly the same way they did with Joel. So I mean, yeah, there's issues with this game, and is that good, or do you want me to just continue?
Well, no, I'd like to discuss. We can go into each reason if that's good.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that's something that's probably the thing I've heard the most is that it's out of character and that they didn't like the way they did it, and I heard that a lot. I heard that when I was debating Hyden on the game. That's probably the number one criticism I've heard. And
Mm-hmm.
what I have to say to that is, like, I don't, like, when you said it may be my fault, I don't think it's your fault for having high expectations, because I had high expectations for the game, too. But, so, I think you made 2 points here, and one of those points was that it was out of character and done in a way you didn't like. So I'm going to talk about that. So, basically what I'd say about that is, I mean, the way that they killed him is the first thing I want to talk about, which is beating his head in with a golf club. Like, it's very gruesome. It's very saddening. But what I think that was actually a good decision. And the reason for that is, like, imagine if they just shot him. Like, you might remember the end of the sniper part as Abby, where Manny gets shot by Tommy. Like,
Right.
if it was just that, then I would be kind of mad, because it'd be like, okay, that was, like, it's sad that he died, but I don't really feel horrible about it. But when I played the game, I didn't see the leaks, but I had a very strong suspicion that he was going to die, and everybody around me was saying, yeah, he's going to die. And then when I see what's happening, I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to die. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't have surprised me if they just shot him or anything, but the way that they did it, by just absolutely destroying and breaking him down and just doing it in the most disgusting way possible, that was like, my heart was racing after that, and that's all I could think about the entire, like, 24 hours after I had played the game for the first time. I was still just shocked and floored by it. And I don't, like, there have been a lot of impactful deaths in games, like, I don't know if have you played through Paper Mario the Origami King?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so then this isn't a spoiler. So, like, when Bobby and Olivia died, those were very sad, but Joel was the only video game death to make me feel that way. One of few deaths ever in media to make me feel that way, because of how they did it. And when you say it's out of character, well, I don't really know specifically what you mean. Can you tell me exactly what part of it was out of character?
So, I mean, you know how Joel and Tommy, they're both trained. They've been in so many different communities. If you play through the first one, Joel is a smart person. He's a very smart survivor. You can see with it's been a minute since I played the game, but remember how when Joel and Ellie, they were going through the city, he already knew that it was set up as a trap for I forgot what that group was called. I'm so sorry, but
Fireflies?
not the Fireflies. It was the people that like literally eat people. That they you know what I'm talking about. It was the group that Joel was
During winter, the winter segment.
yeah
I don't think they
yeah
have a name. I don't think they have a name.
Joel knew that who they were. They knew what they were setting up because he's been a part of all of it. He knows this stuff, And the fact that he gave that much trust into Abby, I don't remember how the scene played out. Did Abby even say her name? Actually, I think she did say her name. But
Yeah, she said her name, and basically it was that she said her name. They protected her. Then they got to the mansion that the WLF were staying at, and then they killed him.
I just don't see, if just judging from the events of the first game, how smart he was, and the fact that he was with Tommy. That's like his, that's his brother. They both have been surviving together the most, other than Joel and Ellie. They've been through it all. I have a hard time seeing Joel give that much trust going to the place where she was from. It just, I don't see it. Like, I get, there was a lot of people, like a lot of situations happening in that moment, but like, I really have a hard time seeing Joel do that from the events of the first one. And, yeah.
So are you referring to him telling Abby his name, which got him killed?
I think he would tell his name. But the fact
Okay.
that he went back to Abby's place, I have a hard time Joel doing that.
Well, I think the thing about that is, like, if you look at those cannibals from the first game, it was very clear to Joel that they were cannibals, right? And when you look at the WLF in this mansion, like, they just got back from fighting off a horde of zombies that was undefeatable. I mean, this isn't Days Gone where you're taking out hordes of zombies, right? This is
Yeah.
Last of Us where you have like 6 bullets at most and you can't take out that many zombies. So the thing is, if you I kind of understand, like, yeah, he might not have done that, but the problem is that was kind of the whole point of the first game. Like, his character changed. Like, at first he was very stubborn, and I know that Winter was near the end of the game, but it was really that final part in the hospital where his character shifted, and I think that's probably, wouldn't you agree that Joel's character development is one of the best parts of the story of the first game?
Oh,
Like,
definitely. I agree. Definitely.
yeah. So I thought that showed that off, because it showed that he had grown to be more accepting of people, to be around people, and like with Ellie, at first he's like, okay, I guess I have to do this, but then it's like a daughter to him throughout the game. But in the second game, he's fully changed, and he's more accepting, more caring, and so I don't think he would be like cautioned to not go back, because again, like, it's a horde. He had nowhere else to go, right? I mean,
That is true. That is
yeah,
true.
she told him, yeah, we're the closest place nearby is the chalet that we're staying at, and so he went there. It's not like he could have gone back to Jackson in the state that he was in with barely any ammo and a horde chasing after him in the middle of winter. So it was actually smart for him to go there, because he would have probably died otherwise. I mean, he did end up dying, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, like, maybe it wasn't the best choice, but it was really the only choice he had. And it's also showing off his character development, because he became more sensitive, but it is showing that has positives, like with Ellie, but it also has negatives, and that's why he died, and I thought that was pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. And to go back with what you were saying about with how the death happened and everything, another thing that I didn't like the death personally, just because I don't know if you heard or watched The Walking Dead. I don't want to spoil for your viewers, but there's a character called. You have okay, so.
Oh, no, I haven't. I haven't watched, played, or read any of the Walking Dead stuff.
So there's this character called Negan, and there's this very iconic scene that the show did, the comics did. It was very much talked about, and basically, the long story short, The Last of Us 2, in my opinion, really copied that death that Negan does with one of the iconic Walking Dead characters. So it was kind of hard for me to look at that death and be like, oh wow, this is a creative death because it's been done before, and I don't know. I that's another reason. Like I've seen this happen before, and that's why I didn't really feel anything. The only thing I felt was how like the voice acting, everything. The voice acting, you could feel the voice acting, but when the death was happening, I feel like there you could do more different ideas than, in my opinion, they stole what they did with The Walking Dead.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I haven't seen it, so I'm not completely sure. But based on what you're saying, yeah, that's not a good thing to copy it. But the first game, like, there's this guy on the internet, and I absolutely despise him. His name is like, I don't know what his name is, but he's one of few people I know of who actually despises, or well, not despises, but doesn't like the first Last of Us game. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's a complete moron. I mean, I'm not trying to be
Yeah.
mean, but he is. He is. He goes off on like a 3-minute long thing about the name isn't correct, and it makes the game bad. But whatever. And I hear him and all these other people, few people who hate The Last of Us. One, which I'm open to criticism of the first game. Actually, I think the gameplay can be very, very boring.
Oh, I
But
agree. I
but
agree.
when people criticize the story, I'm often very against that.
Uh-huh.
And one of the biggest criticisms I hear against the first Last of Us game is that it copies The Walking Dead. And I had somebody who's I know personally explain this to me who's played The Walking Dead and most of the first Last of Us game,
Mm-hmm.
and so I got some of uh, the Walking Dead game ruined for me. So
Mm-hmm.
just skip. I'm gonna put the timestamp on the screen right now. Just skip to that if you don't want spoilers. But basically, there's a character. There's like Clementine and this other guy who are the main characters, and it's basically
Mm-hmm.
like Joel and Ellie, and they grow and bond together. And in the end, Clementine's gonna be the cure for humanity, but he ends up dying. And it came out like a year, like I think 2 or 3 years before the first Last of Us.
So that isn't entirely true about Clementine and Lee. That's the characters the person was talking about. They do grow, they do bond, but there was no cure or anything. Do you mind if I tell you what happens or?
I mean, I've already had most of it spoiled for me, so go ahead.
Basically, they do kill Lee off, but it was an original death. Like what from what I've seen, heard, I've never seen this how they did the death, like how they did it, and that's why I mean, in my opinion, the only thing that Last of Us copied from The Walking Dead is I guess really that death that I was talking about, how Joel died. And I've played the games, I've read the comics, I've watched the show like 50 times, and I personally don't think I think The Last of Us is a very original concept idea, except when it came to Joel's death.
I mean, that's fair. So, yeah, I'm not saying that they're right, obviously.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
love the first Last of Us game a lot. I think it's a great game. But, like, I mean, I see where you're coming from. It was a little derivative of that, I'm assuming. So I'd have to kind of see it for myself, I guess, to get a real
yeah.
opinion. But I mean, if I think that's a valid criticism from what I've heard. But I
Mhm.
mean, it's kind of like a small portion, I'd say. Like
Yeah.
of it, it's one. Like again, I know it's very important. Joel says I'm not downplaying how important doing that well is, but it's one scene in the whole story. It's a 30-hour long game. It's one scene and it's one part of it that was a little derivative. So I think yeah, that's a valid criticism, but I think in the grand scheme of things, like that death was still very impactful and they did still have a lot of original ideas like how it was set up, right? Like the whole horde battle and Abby gameplay around it, that was like very unique and I really enjoyed that like first Abby segment doing that. And I forget. We talked about the first criticism of Joel's death for so long. What was the second thing that you said?
I honestly don't remember now, but just to go back again with the Joel death, I kind of want to. Well, you played the first, so you know Tess, right? I feel like with Tess's character, they made that death more meaningful, impactful, better than they did with Joel. Obviously, the game makes the whole story is focused on Joel's death, but you, the player, I'm not speaking for you, but I feel like most of the players can say that Tess's death was for her little role that she was in for like the first couple chapters of the first game. I feel like they made her death more impactful. Story wise, you can see it definitely took a toll on Joel. I felt more like I felt that death more than I did with Joel's. I
Well,
know. Yeah.
so, I mean, yeah, what I think they did really well with Tess's death was making her a hero, like a martyr in the end, right? Because she ended up helping Joel escape with Ellie in the end. And I think they did that very well. But Joel's death, I don't really think they had to do that because this is the hate game. They said that when they first revealed it. Last of Us 1 was the love game. This is the hate game. And it's all about Ellie going in and absolutely destroying every part of the WLF. And I mean, yeah, Joel's death is the reason for that, but I think what the game does that's really well done is it breaks off from that with all the themes about Ellie's morals and Abby's morals. Like, both of those main characters are very, like, they're not black and white. They're not, you know, Abby is definitely the bad guy, and Ellie is definitely the good guy. You know, they both have a lot of things that they did that are horrible, and they did a lot of things that are good, right?
Mm.
So it broke off from that, one. And two, like, Joel's death, I think that was impactful not because they made him a martyr, because I don't think they should have done that based on the revenge theme and the hate theme and perspective theme. Um, what it did very, very well was taking his character and making him the first example of consequences. Because in the first game, there are things that happen at the end, right? I'm sure you know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And Joel does something very, very bad. It's probably the worst. I think, like, you know, Abby and Ellie do a lot of bad things, but I think that's the worst thing anybody's done that we've seen in the whole series, because, you know, how many lives. But it made it matter in
Mm-hmm.
the second game. The first game, when, like, and this is a criticism I don't think you're making this criticism. I hope you're not. Where people are like, I just don't think they should have made a sequel.
Oh no, I'm not making that.
Yeah, I think they needed to because of what happened at the end of the first game. Joel needed to get what was coming to him, and he did. Like, it's sad to say that a great character like him has to go, but he does. I mean, you have to have consequences in your story. Like, look at Breath of the Wild or any of these other great stories, like Horizon Zero Dawn. When somebody does something bad, or they say something bad, or whatever, or make a mistake, it hurts them. And
Mm-hmm.
Last of Us 1 set it up so that it was that way, and that's why the second game needed to kill him off. So,
Yeah.
I think it was very necessary. I think it was very impactful because it was, I mean, this is not really the right word, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it was
Yeah.
satisfying to see that pay off in the end. The story pay off.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it
mean,
wasn't satisfying to see a great character like him die, but, you know, it
I
was
don't know if I
very.
could say it was satisfying overall for me. I mean, I don't know, but I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Okay, yeah, so is there something else? We've been talking about Joe's death this whole time. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's other things you want to say.
yeah, I have other criticisms. The second criticism I have, and to be honest, I've tried looking at it every other way for just game development, story wise, of why they did this. But I had a problem with how they did how you played as Ellie and Abby. You know how they go to it's Seattle, right? that they go to. I kind of am confused why they just let, like, you were playing Ellie's all 3 days. Like, why didn't they do Ellie day 1, then Abby day 1, Ellie day 2, Abby day 2? Because when you're playing Ellie's story, you know a lot that's going to happen with Abby's story. Hence, Owen dying. And just other things.
I think this is coming from somebody who's beaten the game twice, and it's almost 3 times, right? I'm almost done with Seattle Day 3 as Abby on my 3rd playthrough of the game, so I've seen a lot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I played this game for almost 90 hours. That's probably more than I played almost any other game,
Mm-hmm.
and other than Breath of the Wild. But so I look at this and I see one thing that always sticks with me every time I play as Abby is Seattle A3 as Abby is my favorite part of the game because it looks amazing and it has that great theme of war. But then I always forget because the reason I think they did it was spacing it out to make you have it in the back of your mind. Like when I play Seattle A3 as Abby and I go back to the aquarium, I go, wait, is there something I'm forgetting? And then as I open those doors, I go, oh. And it's almost as if that same thing happened again. Like, it's almost as if the first time I experienced that, it happens every single time after that because they spaced it out. Because, like, if you play most video game stories or movie stories or any story in anything ever, when you know a plot twist and you read or rewatch or replay any piece of media and you know the plot twist, it's not nearly as impactful. But instead of using plot twists, Last of Us 2 instead uses parallels between the two narratives and just very impactful scenes. And the Owen and Mel death, like, Owen is a horrible human being, but Mel is not. And, you know, they're pregnant, so it's very, like, sad to see Ellie kill them. But then when you play as Abby, that happens all over again. And I think the reason they spaced it out like that was to make it more interesting. And plus, the gameplay between the two is a bit different. So I think it would have been kind of jarring to constantly be jumping between Ellie and Abby. Because, you know, with Ellie, it was a lot of stealth and puzzle solving and, like, just kind of narrative moments. It was a bit slower. But as Abby, like, things are insane. Like, look at the Rat King boss battle. Like, that is, like, insanity. And I think it would have been jarring to jump between those. So, yeah.
I don't know. It's just, I see what you're saying, but I don't know. It's just, for me, when I play games, it's a hard time playing. It's like when you get spoiled something. It's hard to continue playing something if, kind of like how, you know, you got spoiled with the Walking Dead game. You're not going to have the same feeling, same, like, whoa, that happened. Like, it's hard to continue playing from Ellie's story, Abby's story, when you know what's going to happen. And I mean, I see what you're saying. That's just how I feel.
Okay. So is there some, or I'm sure you want to get on to your next criticism.
Yeah. So, just I'm trying to remember my other criticisms. I know one of the criticisms, and this is kind of a minor criticism, but I feel like I just, this is something I'm hoping that in the future, it seems like they're going to be doing more with Last of Us Part 2 with updates and stuff. And I have a feeling they might explain this part of the story. And I think I've told you about this. And that is how the bullet going through Tommy's head scene. Or not head, it was through, I forgot what part it was. But
it was like his ear or something.
yeah, but the dude was literally just knocked out cold from it. And if we look at all the other characters at the moment of that scene happening, you had Abby, you had Lev, you had Dina, you had Ellie. All of them were fighting each other, basically. Abby and all of them left, but Ellie and Dina were both very badly hurt, and they looked like they were just sleeping while after Abby left, because, I mean, they were both hurt really bad, to be fair. I am just confused how Tommy got out alive, because I mean, you could die from blood loss from that. And I mean, I understand how he survived that.
Like,
I'm just trying to figure out who saved him, because he was not moving at all.
yeah,
Uh,
I mean,
that's why I'm wondering, are they going to do a Tommy DLC story playing up to his part of the
yeah,
Seattle trip?
that would
Because
actually be very interesting.
I feel like they're hinting that they're going to be doing more with Last of Us 2, and I hope that part gets explained, because I don't know if you can see what I'm saying, but I don't see how he could still be alive, because Dina and Ellie, they were both really hurt, you know.
Yeah,
I just,
I mean, I get it. Like, that is kind of hard to explain, but, like, if you look at the first Last of Us game, right,
mhm,
it's similar, because you had that gap with the winter segment, between
mhm.
winter and spring, and that was explained in the what was it called? Grounded?
It,
No, no.
it
Uh,
was
Left
well,
Behind.
yeah, Left Behind. That's what it's called.
Yeah, which I mean, I thought that was kind of a DLC, but it did explain that gap in a good way.
Hmm.
Like the story was good, but I think the gameplay was kind of boring. Um, but the second Last of Us game, yeah, I mean that is something that they could explain in DLC. What I'm really hoping is either they do a DLC for that, or they can do that in the sequel with the flashbacks, like they explained some of the stuff from the first game in the flashbacks. So yeah,
Hmm.
I see what you're saying. I think they're going to fix it, and even if they don't, like, I'm pretty sure we can fill in the like blanks and understand it was probably Ellie and Dina. They did their best to get Tommy and save him, and then it worked. Like, yes, they were very hurt, but I think Ellie wasn't super hurt. Dina was very, very badly injured. So I think Ellie could have probably saved Tommy. I don't know. Yeah. You want to get into your next thing?
Yes. So another thing so the WLF, that's right. That's what they're called,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sorry,
Yeah.
it's been a while since I've.
Washington Liberation Front.
Yeah. So this group is very smart. They're trained. They're trained by very smart people. These are smart people. I think you know what I'm about to say. But so
Do I? I don't
they
know.
well, I know when we talked about this before, I think I brought this up with you. But so the WFA, they're very smart people. Why did they let Tommy, the brother of Joel, live, knowing their names, knowing where they're from, especially Ellie? She knew all the names. I don't understand why they would do that, especially with what's the guy's name? Jeffrey Wright. That's the actor that played the leader of the WFA. I forgot the guy's name. I'm so sorry.
Isaac? Like the
Yes,
leader?
Isaac.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see somebody like Isaac just telling these people. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you can see what I'm
Well,
trying to say.
yeah, I know what you're saying, but I think the major contradiction there is that it wasn't anybody from outside. Because if you look at Seattle Day 1, one of the major plot points is the Seattle Lake, or not Seattle,
Yeah.
Salt Lake City crew. And it's all
Mm,
of them, Nora, Mel, Owen, Manny, Abby, all of
mm,
them. And
mm,
they went there by themselves. So they were more kind than the WLF. Because, like, if you look at Isaac, he is a monster. Like, that scene where he's torturing the Seraphite, it's so disturbing. And he's
mm,
one of the worst people I have ever seen in a piece of media. And, but Abby and her friends are not that bad. So they wanted revenge on Joel. They didn't want to kill anybody else. One of the major quotes I would point to is from Owen, and he says, "I want what you want, but not at any cost." And that basically is trying to say that they're willing to go in and kill Joel and get revenge, but they don't want to hurt anyone else or lead to anything else bad. And Abby also says later in the story, "We let you live and you wasted it." So it's not the Isaac. He would not have done that. I agree with you. But
Mhm.
it wasn't Isaac. He wasn't there. None of the people from outside this Salt Lake City crew were there. So I can believe that they would have let them live.
I just like I don't know. It's just like these groups, these people. They're very smart, and I see what you're saying. It's just I don't see any other way why they would let. I guess Ellie makes sense, but the brother of Joel, obviously, he's gonna go back and try to find these people. I mean, they know who Tommy is because they know a lot about Joel. This group knows a lot about these people. They're not really Ellie, just more Joel and Tommy. I don't understand why they let Tommy live. That'd be a criticism for me. I see what you're saying though.
I
I see what you're
mean,
saying.
Tommy is. I think they really wanted to let him live, and I think that's going to be explained in the sequel. Maybe we'll play as him. But I think, yeah, I mean, like, they are very smart people, but,
Mm,
like, I don't think it's very difficult to understand, like, it's hard for somebody to go from Jackson to Seattle, right? Especially
right.
seeing as how they were a small community in Jackson, Wyoming, and
Mm,
they don't have all these guns and everything. The WLF can travel all across the country if they want to, but these people in Jackson, all these people in Jackson, they're not going to be able to do that, right?
mm,
So I think they assumed, we're safe, and if they come in to Seattle, we'll kill them because we're so powerful. I think they underestimated them, which I don't think means they're dumb. I think they are very smart, and I think, you know, that shows they're not like these perfect robot people. So, do you want to go to your next criticism?
yeah, I'm pulling up my notes now. I think that's all my main criticisms. Actually, I think I have mine. I'm looking through my script for when I did my video. I think those were my main points though.
What
So
about the ending?
the ending.
Because
Uh,
I hear that there's two things I hear about constantly, and that's one of them.
so I mean, I get the ending, especially with what they were going with the story. Was I satisfied with the ending? No, but I understand why they went with that direction because of how they played the whole game out with being a revenge story that wasn't a revenge story in the end. So I mean, I get the ending. Was I satisfied with it? No, no.
Why? Can you explain?
It's just, I mean, it just goes back to it's. Well, I guess at the end of the day, it's not what I wanted, and I think that's for a lot of people. It's not what they wanted story wise. I don't think people wanted a revenge story that in the end wasn't a revenge story. Some of the criticisms I've heard are from my friends that I can see their point. Do I agree? I don't know, but they felt like it was just a waste of time playing because you have Ellie killing all of these people just to get to Abby, and then Abby she doesn't kill Abby in the end. She killed so many people to the end just to not kill Abby. So
Well,
it like so much stuff happened for no reason, you know. That was their point. Yeah, that's about all I
I
have to say with that. But I'm here.
I
I'm down to hear
mean,
what you have to say.
what basically the ending for me
Mm-hmm.
was what I did want to happen, and I know that's not what a lot of people think. Even people who like the game probably, even other people who like the game a lot wouldn't probably say that. Um, but I think the reason they did it was because, in video games, in a lot of like action movies and stuff like that, a lot of the time the story is good guy goes in and beats bad guy, right? I think we can agree on that. Like most
Mm-hmm.
pieces of media just are that simplistic. So when people say that it's like worthless because she didn't kill her, it wasn't like, yeah, her goal was to kill her, but it wasn't a story about the good guy beating the bad guy. And that's why they had such a long segment with Abby, because they wanted to show that Abby's not just this horrible monster. She's a human being too, who has a reason for killing Joel. And Ellie, like, she didn't kill Abby because of Lev. That's one of the major reasons. Because she saw, like, if you look at what happens, the story arc of Abby, it's very similar to the first Last of Us game. She meets this kid, and she bonds with him, and protects him, and ends up being like a mother-son relationship in this case. And it's a very powerful dynamic that it's not like they just copied it, obviously. I think they added enough new stuff to make it interesting, but still mirroring that. And Ellie saw that. She knew. That's why one of the best quotes in the whole game is like 2 words, and it's "take him." That's all she says. After they fight and she lets Abby go, she says "take him," and she's talking about Lev, but she's also talking about her past and Joel, because she knows I can't just continue this, because then Lev's gonna come and kill me, and then Dina's gonna go in and kill Lev, and it's just gonna be a whole cycle, and I don't want that, and I don't want to continue that. I don't want to add to that. So in the end, it was proving, because what I see Ellie as in The Last of Us Part 2 was, she starts out seeming as the undeniable hero character. And then as we see her killing more and more people, getting more and more just evil, she is this monster. And I think if they ended it with her being a monster, I mean, that could have been okay, but ending it with her being one glimpse of redemption was very powerful. And she didn't want to be like Joel. Like, as we see in the flashback, she was really mad at Joel.
Yes.
For what he did. And she did not want to continue that. By killing Abby, she would have just been continuing the cycle and just not doing what she would have wanted. So, I mean, do you want to respond?
No, I see what you're saying. I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm
the
ready for
only,
it.
the other, if that's all your criticisms, then, I mean, we could move on, but there's one last thing I want to ask you about. This is a criticism that I keep hearing over and over, and I really am sick of it. I mean, I'm sick, I hear a lot of these criticisms over and over, but this one, I feel like it's just, it's used by those people who say that the game is okay, but they think that people like me who thinks the 10 out of 10 are just as bad as the review bombers, which, yeah, I don't think that's fair. But one of the biggest criticism from them, and one of the people who says this, I don't know if you know who they are, their name is Nakey Jakey. And basically they formed an entire video around this, and it's called Ludonarrative Dissonance, and basically what they were saying was, well, she forgives Abby in the end, but what about all those other people she killed? Did they not matter? Would you agree with that criticism?
I mean, so wait, are you talking about what Ellie? With Ellie killing people, and then, or
Yeah,
are you talking
like,
about Abby?
basically they say that she killed all these WLF members, but in the end she didn't kill Abby, and that doesn't make sense. But for me, it's like, well, I mean, that was kind of
I
the whole
mean,
point, is change, and not being the same person for the whole game, you know?
I see the point of the criticism from that guy or person. I've never heard of the person before, but I mean, it's kind of what the story was going for. So I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well, we agree on that, I think. So,
yeah,
okay, so then, are you good for me to go on to my next question?
yeah, I'm ready.
Alright. So my second question is, do you think, I mean, obviously, you probably don't, so I'm gonna add to the question. Do you think it deserved to win Game of the Year? Which, obviously you don't, because you don't like it. And if not, what do you think that was nominated, what do you think deserved to win besides it, and why? And also, there's this thing going around where people are claiming that the Game Awards was rigged, which, like, I mean, a lot of people, whenever people speak positively of the game, they say paid off, or in this case, they say rigged, and there's no
So
evidence.
I don't think Last of Us 2 deserved Game of the Year, but I'm not saying it's rigged. I don't think Game Awards is rigged, but I do feel as if I believe Jeff Kelly said there's a team of over 50 people that decide who wins these categories.
Oh,
Well, yeah, you go ahead.
oh, so I just wanted to add to make sure you know is that's 10%. So it's 90% of it is up to the voters, and then they have 10% based on those people. Just so you know.
Well, then in that case, I still have a hard time believing that Last of Us 2 won Game of the Year. I watched a lot of videos on what people voted for. And I mean, if you look at the players' vote pick, Ghost of Tsushima won that by a long shot between Last of Us 2. I do not think the game. I don't know. I don't want to say it's rigged, but I definitely think the team over there is definitely more biased towards PlayStation stuff. If you look at their recent history with years, I mean, if you look at the nominated games this year, how many of those titles are PlayStation exclusives? It's like over half of the
2.
games nominated. You had Final Fantasy VII Remake. You had
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that game.
Tsushima. You had Last of Us 2.
So that was half of them. But that's, I mean, I don't think that that's like a fair thing because I mean, those were 3 of the biggest games of the year, right? I mean, Nintendo, Animal Crossing, Paper Mario, Hyrule Warriors, that game looks great. All of those are, I mean, I only played Paper Mario so far out of all of those. But, they're good, but they're not, like, game changers. I don't think, like, Last of Us Part 2, that was a hugely ambitious game. It had, like, a huge, and I want to pull up the Metacritic stats real quick, because this is something that I've actually looked at a lot, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people see.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking right here, this is the live statistics. There's 76,000 positive reviews. There's 7,000 mixed, which is 5 to 7, and there's 64,000 negative. So yes, there are a lot of negative reviews, but there's also a lot of positive reviews. And keep in mind, they found a lot of evidence of people who haven't played the game doing negative, and people literally typing one word or doing a bot account or extra count to vote, right? Right. So like it's not like 64,000 people voted in against the game. There's no evidence of that happening with positive or mixed reviews, but there is evidence of that happening with people spamming terrible reviews. If I see all of these like what these accounts on Metacritic, these look like they were created like a few days ago. and
Mm-hmm.
and they've given it zeros and ones, which like okay, so I just have to add this real quick. You might not agree with me on this. Sorry, because you gave the game a 2 out of 5 or 4 out of 10.
Yeah, 4 out of 10.
But I think we can both agree the gameplay is fantastic.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the
The mu-
gameplay is 20 times better than the first one.
Yeah.
It's a fun game. It is a fun game.
The music is great. The
Yeah.
atmosphere is great. The horror certainly great. And the graphics are great. And that's like when you look at my reviews, I have 5 categories. I'm moving away from this. But I usually have 5 categories: graphics, music, combat if the game has it, world mechanics, and story. So of all those, we just talked about 4 of them would get like probably a perfect score or a 4 out of 5. And that would just mean the game is at the very worst an 8 out of 10. So like I know the story is more important with this game than a lot of others, but
Yeah, and then I think why Last of Us is so popular is the story. It's not necessarily gameplay mechanics. I mean,
I
that's
think
why everyone loves Last of Us.
I mean, I think Last of Us 2, I think that game proved that the series can be loved for gameplay, right? Like, I think The gameplay is probably some of my favorite of all time because of how, great survival horror, action, shooter mechanics, all of that. Everything was so fine-tuned. So when you look at the majority of the game, it's great or perfect. But when you look at these, I know that these are criticisms you have of the story, and I'm not saying they're just invalid, but, you pointed out, 4 things or 5 things, right? And they were pretty big things. But, so keep in mind, we're going off of this, this score, which I think is a fair set of categories. So we have, I'm doing the math here, so we have 4 of the 5, right?
Yes.
Get a 5 out of 5. So overall, the score is out of 20. So that means it's 25. Sorry, 25. So we have 20 out of 25. That's a 4 out of 5. And I don't think the story is a 0 because of those criticisms. I think at the worst, I think the score you gave the game would be a fair score to give the story at the very least, which is 2 out of 5. So let's say one of them is a 2 out of 5. So then we have a score of 22 out of 25. That's almost a 4.5 out of 5. So that's almost a 9 out of 10. And
yes.
So when these people are saying it's 0, it's 1, it's 2, I think a major thing is that they haven't played the game, or they're completely biased, or they didn't give it a shot. I've seen so many reviews saying, I played up until Joel's death, and then I couldn't play it anymore. Then don't review the game, right? You haven't beaten it, you haven't even gotten far in it, you played the first hour, and you put up your review, which was a 0. So a lot of the people who are hating on this game are just completely invalid. I'm willing to say that. And a lot of these review bombers are just wrong because they haven't even given it a shot or looked at it critically. If people are giving it, GameSpot gave it an 8 out of 10. That's probably the most critical review of the game I have seen that is almost everything I would agree with, right? So, if you're giving it a 4 out of 10 for the story, then it's still almost a 9 out of 10. So, I think, you're kind of right, it is kind of weird that Ghost of Tsushima won by a pretty big margin, and yet it was Last of Us 2 that ended up winning. But I think that Last of Us Part 2 has a lot more positive eyes than many people would think. A lot more people really like the game than most would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's very weird that The Last of Us 2, the Game Awards, won every nominated award except one category. I just don't think the vote matter.
I think it won 7 awards, and then it was nominated for 11.
Oh, okay. I thought the only award that didn't win was the music category, which I feel like music-wise, The Last of Us definitely should have won that one if it was to win any award.
Ghost of Tsushima and Paper Mario, those were really good too, but yeah, Last of Us 2. But yeah, so I mean, yeah. I don't
know. It's just if you look at the Game Awards history, the people over there seem more biased towards PlayStation.
Yes, I would agree with you. I think. Yeah.
And I think they are lying to people. They've made this whole Game Awards thing make it believe that your votes matter. But I just want to bring this up since we were talking about the Game Awards. I hope if I'm going too much, just let me know and I'll stop.
That's fine.
They have 2 separate categories for the Game Awards, and that's the players' vote thing, which if the votes matter, you shouldn't have to have a whole nother category for voting stuff.
Well,
and then if we look at what won that by majorly, and that was Ghost of Tsushima. Did Ghost of Tsushima even win an award? I don't even remember. I felt like every time I was watching stuff, it was just Last of Us.
It won 2. I think Though, I don't know. I'll look up the stats. You can continue.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. I just don't understand why they need two different categories. And Jeff Keighley, I've heard him say in an interview before. I haven't heard about what you were talking about with it. Not saying it's not true or anything, but I've heard him say that how they pick the game awards, who wins and everything. So they have a team of 50 people, or over 50 people actually. They say they grow every year in terms of when picking stuff, and they decide what wins that award. And yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. And
Mm.
yeah,
Well,
and I think. Did you ask me? Did I think that something else deserved to be on that list, or did I imagine that?
well, I'm gonna get to that, but first I wanna figure this out. But while I'm looking up the stats, I wanna say, like, so I'm doing this just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my award show, and that, to my surprise, I think, did you vote on it or
I think I did. Yeah.
okay? So I think I think it was like between 10 and 15 people voted, which is like a fourth of everybody who watches me. So a lot of people voted for the scale, and Last of Us 2 won Game of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did not vote. Sent it like I sent it to a lot of places where I thought people hated the game. You know, like most people that I know personally hate the game, and a lot of people in public places that I mean hate the game, and those are pretty much all the places where I posted the link to vote, and it still won. So I don't think it was rigged. I don't know the exact stats, but I think if you're considering like that as an example, I think it's surprising when you look deeper how many people actually do like the game.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it's rigged, and I wouldn't say just because they didn't do anything off the voting that it's rigged. It's just I do think that team is more biased towards PlayStation titles. I think that's what I would say about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, I found it. So, Ghost of Tsushima, uh,
And I
okay,
mean, there was some awards that Last of Us won that I think was well deserved, like voice acting. I mean, what Last of Us smashed the voice acting; they did very well with that.
mhm.
And yeah,
Okay.
you go.
Sorry, but I found it. So it was. Oh, wow. Okay. So the entire time of voting in the Game Awards, like from December 6th, which was the final round, December 6th, all the way to like December 10th, the day of the Game Awards, like hours before the show was going to start, you know what happened? So it was Last of Us 2 had 43%, while Ghost of Tsushima had 31%. All that time, and then with 4 hours left, all of the sudden, within a couple of minutes, Ghost of Tsushima jumped to 47, and Last of Us 2 went to 33. So, I mean, I do agree that they're biased. They're kind of biased towards PlayStation. Like when it was 2018, I think they picked what was it? God of
God of
War.
War.
I'm like I know a lot of people like that game, but I don't. Um, I
It's a
think
good game, but I think there
well,
was a lot of other titles that should have won instead.
Celeste. But yeah, so Celeste or Spider-Man. If you're gonna pick a Sony game, pick Spider-Man. I think they are like. I mean, I think if they were biased, you would be seeing like. Because I mean, what's one? 2016, it was Uncharted 4, which I think is deserving. Like
Yeah, I agree.
that was I haven't played it yet, but from looking at 2016, there were not really that many great games out, especially from Nintendo. That was a slow year since 2017 was so good. But you know, they won in 2016 deservedly. They didn't win in 2015, which, you know, that should have happened because Order 1886 wasn't even up, and people hate that game even though it's just mediocre. But you know, 2017 Breath of the Wild. It wasn't Horizon or Nier Automata. It wasn't any Sony game that year. 2018 it was God of War, and 2019 it wasn't Days
They
Gone. It wasn't
they
anything else. Yeah, go
they
ahead.
in 2017. I mean, you could consider this a PlayStation title. It's up to you. Persona 5 was nominated though in 2017. It
Well,
is a PlayStation
I mean, yeah,
exclusive.
but
It
people love that
still
game.
is. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, you go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So, like, I mean, 2018, I don't think God of War should have won, but I think if you're saying they're overall biased, I don't necessarily think that's fair because, I mean, there's a lot of
20.
years that
Oh,
that
sorry.
Sony hasn't won. I mean, I think the only years I can recall them winning were years that Naughty Dog released games. Like, really, that's it. I mean, they haven't really won. Because, I mean, they make tons of great games. Insomniac and Sucker Punch and Ben Studio.
Yeah,
All of these
I agree.
fantastic studios that pump out amazing games constantly on Sony platforms. But Last of Us, Uncharted, those are the games that win them awards. And they haven't won. I think they won 2009 with Uncharted 2, which I think definitely they deserve. That game's a masterpiece. They won 2011, or was it? Yeah, I think it was 2011 with Uncharted 3, which I'm not the biggest fan of Uncharted 3. I haven't beaten it yet, but I played the majority of it, and I'm not the biggest fan. But I can't recall any other amazing games that came out that year. And then 2013 with Last of Us, deservedly,
Yeah, deserved.
won. Although,
Definitely.
I mean, I really like 3D World, and Nintendo released a lot of great games that year on the 3DS. But I do think Last of Us, well, I don't know. I mean, it was definitely one of the best games of the year, and I definitely think it deserved to win. And then, you know, Uncharted 4. So they've only really won in those cases, so I don't really think it's necessarily fair to say they're overall biased, but I see kind of what you mean, and I think Last of Us 2 won because, I mean, like, it's a very good game. Like, a game. I have to reiterate that word, game. It's not a movie where, you know, the story's the majority of the experience. It's a game, and it had pretty much every element was perfect, other than some people didn't like the story. So I think that, you know. So then I'd like to go on to my final category. My
All right.
not category question. So this one's a bit more complicated. What are your favorite and least favorite parts of the game? And yeah.
So, favorite things. Okay. So, my favorite things would have to be, obviously, the music. I love the music soundtracks for both Last of Us games. I think soundtracks, they're amazing. Some of the best video game soundtracks ever.
Yeah.
And gameplay, Last of Us 2 does a lot better than what Last of Us 1 did. And I would say that's probably the only things I like about Last of Us 2.
Can you point to specific, not necessarily like parts that make up the game, but like sections of the game that you played through that you enjoyed and didn't enjoy? Like, so for me, to give an example, like I'd say my favorite part is Seattle Day 3 as Abby and Seattle Day 2 as Abby. And my least favorite part is probably either probably Santa Barbara.
So I don't remember which day it was, but the day that Ellie was going through Seattle and what's Lev's group's called again? I'm so sorry. I'm sounding like such a
Seraphites?
non-Latin. I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Did you say Lev's group?
Yes, Lev's group.
The
What was the group?
Seraphites.
Yeah, when we see their first appearance through Ellie's story, I thought that was very, very cool. Because I mean,
Seattle Day 2.
Saturday too, okay. And then the arrow going through Ellie, like that was like what? That was unexpected. I love that part. It really used the stealth mechanic, which Last of Us 1, in my opinion, had a really good stealth mechanic already, and I think Last of Us Part 2 actually just updated that and made it a lot better. I think that's one thing that these games do very well with, and that is stealth. You see games do stealth, but sometimes they can be a little wild and not that great, if I'm being honest. And I really liked what they did with stealth mechanics. And what was some other parts? The part when Abby and Lev are getting across they're like in the air, going across a
bridge.
building. Yeah, the
the
bridge.
sky bridge.
That part was pretty cool.
That's Seattle Day 2 is Abby.
I think that day was pretty good too, or in terms of that part of the gameplay.
Yeah.
And what else?
Well,
I would.
I would definitely agree with that because like Seattle Day 2 is Abby. You know, you have the entire Skybridge part where you're fighting the Seraphites, and then you have the hotel with the stalkers, which makes me scream in terror every time. And then you have the Rat King too. So I think that I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one where Ellie and Jesse are about to head to the hospital, but then Jesse dips, and then it's all Ellie's turn to you're playing just Ellie solo only. I believe that was also day two.
Well.
Was that day two? I think. Also,
When they're together and then Jesse leaves, right?
yeah, yes.
That's Seattle Day 3 as
Day
Ellie.
three.
Yeah. Because
Day
Seattle
three,
Day.
I really like that day three also. Yeah.
Okay. Alright, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Other
Okay.
than that, that's what I would say I liked about the game.
Okay. Well, so, if there's anything else you want to add or say?
I mean, look, I see people like hating on people for liking Last of Us 2, and I just want to say I'm not one of those people. I fully respect everyone's opinion on the game, and just like I hope everyone respects my opinion on it. I agree with what he was saying earlier. People do hate on this game without even finishing the game. They just stop when Joel dies. If you're one of those people, I do think you should at least finish the game before making an opinion. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. And thank you for watching. This was a very long interview, but I think we
Yeah.
really got to talk about a lot, and I think it was very interesting. So
Mhm.
thank Max for coming here, and thank you guys for watching. Be safe, and goodbye.